Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Brendan Fallon. An update on the Trump assassination attempt. After several rounds of congressional hearings, the United States Secret Service is holding a press conference today on its investigation into the July 13th shooting. We'll have the live coverage. After deadly protests and hundreds of arrests, the U.S. now recognizes Venezuela's opposition candidate as the legitimate president-elect. Arian Pazdar in South America to tell us why the State Department is taking this step. The Department of Homeland Security just paused its migrant flight program. It allows thousands to fly into the U.S. every month. That's after a new report found that the program was riddled with fraud. 3 Americans have touched down on U.S. soil in the largest prisoner swap between Russia and the West since the end of the Cold War. Hear how people are reacting. Updates on the attempted assassination of former President Trump today. Secret Service Acting Director Ronald Rowe is holding a press conference to give more details of the agency's investigation. This comes after 3 congressional hearings, during which lawmakers from both sides of the aisle bashed the Secret Service's security flaws during Trump's July 13th rally in Pennsylvania, and lack of transparency in the aftermath. Let's take a look.
You need to know that I have their backs, and that is my commitment to them. I want to thank our state and local partners. The Secret Service relies on local law enforcement for every protective event. Those valiant men and women work tirelessly protecting their communities. They know the people, places, and terrain that we operate in. We owe them our thanks, and simply put, we cannot do our jobs without them. And I know how important this relationship is. I spent 4 years in local law enforcement before joining the Secret Service. I know the long hours these men and women put in and the professionalism they bring to this partnership. And in that capacity, I was always proud to support the Secret Service's protective mission when called upon as a municipal police officer. In no way should any state or local agency supporting us in Butler on July 13th be held responsible for a Secret Service failure. Typically, the Secret Service refrains from commenting on ongoing investigations, but we know these are extraordinary circumstances. So please understand that the information provided today is based on what I know now to a degree of certainty. We will learn more as interviews are completed and further evidence is gathered and analyzed, and I will share more information as it becomes available. But I can say without a doubt that heroism was present that day. Secret Service agents rushed to the stage to shield the former president with their bodies within 3 seconds of bullets ringing out in an unflinching act of bravery. The Secret Service counter-sniper who neutralized the threat with a single shot undoubtedly saved countless lives. We're in a high operational tempo, and I need and I want our Secret Service workforce, the dedicated men and women of the Secret Service. I want to know and I want to make sure that they are uplifted so they can focus on carrying out the mission. They are worthy of trust and confidence, and they deserve your support. And let me take a moment to speak to the American people that are counting on us to do our job, to protect their ability to cast a vote for the candidate of their choice. The Secret Service's successes are largely unknown. You will only know of our failures, and those have been documented, and all of them are undeniably dark days in our nation's history. But let me tell you about the dedicated patriots of the Secret Service. These public servants are the quiet professionals working in the background, day in and day out. They are standing the watch, providing a blanket of protection to the people that work in the White House, to the thousands of people who attend political rallies and nominating conventions, to the thousands of American citizens who line Pennsylvania Avenue every 4 years on Inauguration Day to see the new president and the new vice president. And they are out there right now doing this mission. They are focused, and they live their professional lives committed to the values of this agency: justice, duty, loyalty, courage, and honesty. This is who we are, and this is what we do, and we will earn back your trust. I'll now provide a timeline of the visit to Butler, Pennsylvania. On July 8th, personnel assigned to the agency's Pittsburgh field office conducted planning meetings and a site walkthrough with law enforcement partners and campaign staff. On July 10th, Secret Service counter-sniper and technical security personnel arrived in Pittsburgh and began advanced planning for their teams. July 12th, the build-out of the campaign rally site began and continued through the early morning hours of July 13th. In the morning of July 13th, a site briefing was conducted with Secret Service personnel and law enforcement partners supporting the event. Secret Service personnel took their posts, and a technical security sweep of the protective site commenced prior to the site's opening to event staff, vendors, and to the public. At 12:30 p.m., the Secret Service opened the protective site to event staff and vendors, and then at 1 o'clock, magnetometer screening of the estimated 15,000 people attending the campaign rally event, staff, and vendors began. At 5:30 p.m., former President Trump arrived at the campaign rally via Secret Service motorcade, and at that time he met with supporters in a secure backstage area within the protective site. At 5:45 p.m., a local Butler County Emergency Services Unit counter-sniper team member texted the Secret Service counter-sniper team leader about a suspicious person and sent 2 photos of the individual, later identified as the assailant. At 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service counter-sniper team leader texted the Secret Service counter-sniper teams that local law enforcement was looking for a suspicious individual outside of the perimeter lurking around the AGR building. At this time, Secret Service personnel were operating with the knowledge that local law enforcement was working on an issue of a suspicious individual. The concept of local law enforcement working on such issues is common at sites. And on July 13th, there were over 100 calls for support. At 6 p.m., former President Trump took the stage to begin remarks. And based on what I know right now, neither the Secret Service counter-sniper teams nor members of the former president's security detail had any knowledge that there was a man on the roof of the AGR building with a firearm. It is my understanding that personnel were not aware the assailant had a firearm until they heard gunshots. At 6:11 p.m., a member of the former President Trump's protective detail contacted their Pittsburgh field office counterpart to inquire about the radio update that there was an issue local law enforcement was looking into near the perimeter. At 6:11 p.m., the assailant's first volley of 3 shots was fired, and within 3 seconds, the former president's detail rushed the stage and covered former President Trump, shielding him with their own bodies. The 4 through 8 shots took place over the next several seconds. 15.5 seconds after the assailant's first shot, a Secret Service counter-sniper fired a single round that neutralized the assailant. That concludes a quick, brief summary of the timeline. And with that, I'll turn it over to our staff here to begin any questions.
Director, we're going to start with Fox News. David Spons with your question.
Hi, sir. Thank you for doing this. You said earlier this week to Congress that You said earlier this week to Congress that you don't want to tip anything on the scale as far as disciplinary action is concerned. I need to ask you, since you testified, has anyone been suspended with or without pay? Has anyone been fired? And will you tell us as people are disciplined along the way, or is this something we're going to need to just constantly be asking? Or will you update and tell us 5 people have been fired, 6 people, 7 people? What can you tell us?
Sure. Thank you for that question, David. So, as I said in my opening statement, there are going to be, there's the mission assurance review. If that mission assurance review is looking into if there were policy violations. At that point now, if in fact there were policy violations, at that point now it'll go into a parallel path of a disciplinary type of investigation. Those are internal investigations that deal with employee matters, so we're not going to be able to provide real-time updates or continuously to provide you updates on that. But what I will tell you is that these were very thorough investigations, and if in fact there were policy violations and they are substantiated, those employees will be held accountable.
I think that if I just may, sir, people want accountability. You may not be able to tell us names or positions or something, but will you be able to say that people have been disciplined? People want to hear that there's some accountability here.
I will be able to, at least at a high level, provide at least some type of statement that people are being accountable, being held accountable.
If I may, and I appreciate this, Fox Digital obtained some new video of somebody on the roof, which we believe is the assailant that was running back and forth while President Trump was speaking. What do you make when you see of that? How does that go with this timeline here?
Yeah, so it affirms to me, and again, and you heard this from the FBI, and they're still conducting interviews and looking at this. It even just affirms to me that this was a failure. We should have had better protection for the protectee. We should have had better coverage on that roof line. We should have had at least some other set of eyes from the Secret Service point of view covering that. That building was very close to that outer perimeter, and we should have had more of a presence. And so as far as the timeline of him running back and forth, I know the FBI has provided a bit of a chronology as well, and so I'd have to go back and look at that. But the bottom line is this, David. This was a Secret Service failure. That roof line should have been covered. We should have had better eyes on that.
Thanks, Director. We're going to go to the Washington Post. Carrie Stein.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. I have just a quick follow-up. Can you describe, you said there were 100 calls for support. Who those calls came from and what those looked like? And also, moving forward, do you anticipate, and if so, what any different changes in protocol between how Secret Service communicates or works with local law enforcement specifically as they work to secure events or other things?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So with regards to calls for support, it was a very hot day that day. There was a lot of not only EMS type of calls to address people, but there were people that needed some other type of law enforcement assistance. This happens, candidly, happens a lot at outdoor rallies, where especially on hot days. So there was a lot of traffic, radio traffic on the local net about, hey, I need EMT here. So there was a lot of people that were needing assistance. With respect to the interoperability, so one of the things that I've directed is I've commissioned a task force. And that task force is going to be leveraging the resources of the Department of Homeland Security. It'll be co-chaired in all likelihood by someone from the Secret Service and someone from CISA. And I think we're also going to bring in some state and local law enforcement. The interoperability challenge, it's not an easy fix. It's not as simple as just trying to figure out the local frequency of the agency you're working with and then piping that into your radio network. It requires a substantial technical fix. In the meantime, before we can get to that, what I need to have is I need to make sure that our folks, when they're out there, we use a counterpart system. On the day in Butler, we had a Pennsylvania State Trooper in our security room. They also had a unified command post that had some of the other agencies that were on site that day. It is plainly obvious to me that we didn't have access to certain information, not by anybody's fault. It just so happened that there was a sense of urgency, that there might have been radio traffic that we missed. We have to do a better job of that. So moving forward, in addition to this task force that we'll provide more information on next week as we begin to stand that up, I've also directed all of our SACs, our special agents in charge of field offices across the country, to reevaluate where we put our security rooms. If a state or local sets up a unified command post, maybe we need to be in that room as well, as opposed to just being in another room and relying on that counterpart system. It was so apparent to me that in this incident, in the final 30 seconds, which has been the focus of what happened before the assailant opened fire, there was clearly radio transmissions that may have happened on that local radio net that we did not have. And so we have to do a better job of co-locating, leveraging that counterpart system, and this is going to drive our operations going forward. We did not. It did not make it over to us, or whether we did not hear it. It just did not make it over to us. It did not make it to us. And I go back to my opening statement where the members of the detail, they did not. All they knew that the issue that the locals were working an issue at the president's 3 o'clock, which would have been off to his right, which is where the shot came from.
We're going to go to Rebecca Santana with the Associated Press.
Just to follow quickly on that question of the 100, sorry, to clarify on the 100 calls that you got roughly that day, I understand a lot of them were heat related. How many specifically were suspicious people? Was this the only call, the eventual shooter that was a suspicious character? And then also just can you clarify, did you guys have a drone on site? Did you try to use it? And if not, like, why did you not use the locals' offer of a drone?
Sure. So as I understand it now, based on the information I have, there were other calls of suspicious individuals. And your other question was about drones? Drones. Yeah. Sure. Right. So we did not have a drone on site. We did not put a drone up. Based on the information I have right now, I am aware that there was a request from a local agency to offer to fly a drone on that day, and that is also part of the mission assurance review that I've asked to get some better insight in. One of the other changes that I implemented when I became the acting director is we are now going to leverage the use of unmanned aerial systems at sites now. So we are putting those assets out, and we should have had better line of sight on some of those high ground concerns. We thought we might have had it covered with the human eye, but clearly we are going to change our approach now, and we are going to leverage technology and put those unmanned aerial systems up.
Thank you so much for doing this. You mentioned that there were text messages from Butler ESU to U.S. Secret Service counter snipers. I'm curious if that is routine. There were 2 communication channels at the Butler rally, and you referenced earlier this week it appears that information was stuck or siloed at the state and local channel. What was the plan to relay information from locals to the Secret Service initially? What is the protocol? And I just have one follow-up.
Sure. So, Nicole, we use that counterpart system, right? And so the teams, especially on the tactical side, when it comes to the tactical, our counter-assault team, they actually had an embed with them from the local TAC team. And they had that radio net as well with Pennsylvania State Police. With respect to the counter snipers, they were using cellular or telephone text communications. At this point, moving forward, what I have directed now is that everybody should be using the radio net. And if we don't have the ability to pipe in or leverage that counterpart system, that's one of the things that we're looking at now. We should be able to have direct comms with the people that are supporting us, and that's moving forward. That's what I have directed.
So just to clarify, U.S. Secret Service counter snipers did not have radio communications.
Not with the local CS folks that were providing a support. They were basically had an area responsibility independent from where our counter snipers were securing.
And just a last thing, did the U.S. Secret Service counter sniper teams that arrived on site on July 10th ever relay line of sight concerns? What came of that? And can you confirm that this was the first 2024 campaign event that counter sniper teams were assigned to the former president?
Sure. As part of their advance, they identified those line of sight, those high ground concerns, and there's a division of labor. With respect to the whether or not this was the first time, it was. It was the first time Secret Service counter snipers were deployed to support the former president's detail.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. I have a question about the review that you did, the picture that you showed in the Senate the other day of the vantage point that the local snipers had. How do you know that that's the window that they were actually posted at? Because they're saying that they're on a completely other side of the building. And related to that, has the Secret Service actually interviewed the snipers that were in the AGR building?
So thank you for that. So once the FBI had released the Butler Farm Show site, we were able to take custody of it, and we sent the full resources of our Office of Investigations, which included the Forensic Services Division. We did a full site reconstruction, and this is part of our ongoing mission assurance review. As part of that, that also included the plotting and also trying to identify where not only our personnel were, but also where state and local law enforcement were. And then the second part of your question was?
Well, so, I mean, how did you identify where they were? And have you interviewed the local snipers?
So the mission assurance, we're starting with our federal personnel and working out. We will get, if they're willing to be interviewed, we will ask for the local law enforcement on site to be interviewed that day. How we went back and reconstructed that was based on what we had based on the ops plan, and then also based on what our own folks, as they understood it on the day of.
Well, but I mean, you talked a lot about how you may not have been as specific as you need to be. So how do you know that they were in that window, that if they looked left, they could have seen something? Because they're saying there's no way they couldn't see any of the routes from where they were posted at the other side.
So I think what we'll do is we'll let the mission assurance play that out, and we'll look forward to interviewing them and definitely getting their side of the story. But what I also want to reiterate is this was a Secret Service failure, and so they should not be blamed. We're not trying to shift blame to anybody, and that's the important takeaway, that we need our state and local partners out there doing this with us every day.
Thanks, Director. We're going to go to Peter Thomas at ABC.
Director, thank you for taking the time. Just a couple questions, if you could walk us through some things to help us better understand. Have you gotten to the bottom of why there was no one stationed on the roof from a law enforcement perspective, and why there was no one there to secure the building to make sure no one could get up there? Have you gotten any clarity on why those two lapses in security were in place? And I have a couple quick follow-ups.
Sure. It's something that, again, having been there the day after I was named the acting director, I wanted to put eyes on and go up there and see it. Yes, and looking at that site, it really, seeing how close that site was to the stage, seeing where it was, it definitely raised a lot of questions in my mind that there should have been physical presence, if not on the roof, that there should have been better security to prevent anyone from getting up on that roof. Moving forward, I've directed our Office of Protective Operations and our Special Operations Division now that when we are up operational and we have counter snipers out there, that we're working with locals, and that they in fact will also be out present. At the very least, the presence of a law enforcement officer can deter a lot of bad activity. Having been a local police officer, I will never know how many crimes I prevented just by being there, just by walking the street and being out there. And so moving forward, one of the things that we want to do is we want to deter people from even thinking about trying to do something like this again. And the only way we can do that is leveraging not only the resources that we have, but the resources of our state and locals, and putting them out there in an overt presence.
Two very quick follow-ups. You talked at length at the hearing the other day about the system that did not operate that could detect drones. Mm-hmm. Can you describe a little bit of how that works? Does that go in the sky itself to detect the drones? And then finally, the interoperability issue. I'm clear in terms of that Secret Service radios were not communicating with the locals. Mm-hmm. But you had people in the command post, right, who in theory could hear and know some basics of what was going on. Is that am I understanding that correctly? So
with respect to the counter-UAS, Pierre, I don't want to get into too much sensitive information, but what I can tell you is it allows that asset allows the geolocation to be able to plot where a drone is within a certain distance of how we set up. So think of it as like geofencing, and then being able to pinpoint and detect where that is. With respect to the agency that was, we had Pennsylvania State Police, but it appears that there was really a big sense of urgency going on, and the state and locals were doing everything they possibly could to try to find the assailant. He had already come to their attention. They were actively trying to find him. And I believe everyone was doing their level best to try to locate him. But there could have been other agencies that were putting out radio transmissions. And this is something that we'll work with the FBI to get further on. But those radio transmissions might have just been back to the Unified Command Post and maybe not have made it over the Pennsylvania State Police there. But that's something that we're going to look into, and definitely something that we are moving forward. We definitely want to remedy this going forward.
But your Secret Service personnel in the command post had some sense that something was going on based on what they were being told about the radio.
Yes, that they were working an issue at the 3 o'clock of the stage.
We'll go to Andrew Goodsworth with Group Reuters.
Thanks for doing this. I wanted to ask you about changes moving forward. Former President Trump has said he wants to continue having outdoor rallies. What specifically will be different at the next rally that wasn't the case in Butler? And if I could ask a follow-up to, do you have information in the 30 seconds after the gunman was confronted on the roof by a local law enforcement officer that there were local law enforcement trying to communicate with the Secret Service that there was someone on the roof with a gun and that transmission was the one that was missed?
Okay. So with respect to the former president wanting to get back out there, listen, it's a campaign season, right? Candidates want to be out there. They want to be, whether it's an indoor site or an outdoor site, it's on the Secret Service to make sure that we create a secure environment. Listen, we identify challenges, we identify concerns, and then it's on us to figure out what we need to do to mitigate that. So if there are going to be future campaign rallies outside, it's going to be on us to make sure that we are providing all of the assets and resources to make sure that those sites are indeed secure. With respect to the radio transmissions, based on what the FBI, my colleague from the FBI testified the other day, and they are working on isolating some of those radio frequencies from the state and locals, that there was somebody who did in fact radio out that they had seen the individual with a weapon. What I can tell you is that piece of information, that vital piece of information, and by no fault of anyone, it was a very stressful situation. It did not make it over. Our detail, our counter snipers, everyone that was there that day, were operating under the assumption and under the last bit of information they had received that there was an issue that the locals were working at the 3 o'clock. That's the bit of information that we had, not anything about a weapon.
We'll go to Holmes Library with CNN.
I wanted you to address, or if you can, describe the Pittsburgh field office and their level of experience, especially in preparing for events like this, and also have they explained their thinking and how they defined the perimeter that day?
Sure. Thanks, Holmes. Our Pittsburgh field office, I don't think there's anybody in the Secret Service who is feeling this more than the men and women of our Pittsburgh field office. And I've met with them. And they are down right now. And so when I've met with them the other day, it was very difficult. It's difficult for them. They feel like they let their colleagues down. They feel like they let the country down. And they are wearing this, and it's open. You can see it. It's an open wound that they are carrying. They are a very experienced office. And what I will say is they are cooperating with the mission assurance. They understand the gravity of this situation. And they are definitely down right now.
If I can, one follow-up. You testified about one of the Secret Service failures was an assumption that day. I'm curious, how the Secret Service can even make assumptions regarding protection, because it seems antithetical to the entire protection mission.
Yeah. So when I said it's a failure to challenge our assumptions, meaning the assumption that, hey, that's going to be addressed or that's going to be covered by state and local. So earlier this week, I convened a call with all of our special agents in charge of all of our field offices, and I expressed to them, listen, we need our state and local counterparts, but we also have to be very direct, very clear about what our expectations are about what we need from them. whether it's a particular asset, whether it's particular numbers of personnel. We need to be very clear so that they have an understanding of exactly what we need from them. That's on us. We need to be better communicators and articulate exactly what we need to mitigate any challenges, concerns, or anything that we identify during that advanced process. And so I have full confidence in our SACs in the field. I have full confidence in our state and local counterparts that moving forward now, we're not going to have this assumption that, oh, we think that they have it. No, we're going to work together. We're going to have good, hard, fierce conversations about what we're going to do, and then we're going to go out there and we're going to make all of these venues secure moving forward.
Thank you, Acting Director. One thing, for starters, I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit on a portion of the timeline in which you address a communication between the Secret Service detail and personnel at the Pittsburgh field office. It just struck me as a little vague, and I was curious if you could elaborate on what that communication was.
So the former president's details, they had an advanced person on the ground who was responsible for the site. The radio transmission goes out about locals working an issue at the 3 o'clock. The member of that detail called their Pittsburgh field office counterpart. Hey, what do you know about this? In the midst, right in the middle of that phone conversation, the shots begin firing. So that's the context of it.
And sorry if I missed. Could you say how they became aware of the locals working an issue in the first place to even have that conversation with them?
That was the radio transmission that was put out by our security room.
I got it. Okay. Just to follow up, I'm curious about, you mentioned the first event where Secret Service counter snipers had been assigned as part of the security for former President Trump. To what extent do you think that factored into what were ultimately shown to be the failures? Just that this was a first time, at least in a while, in his capacity as a former president, that they were there on the site.
So
the novelty of it. Sorry.
Sure. So let me just clarify one thing. This is the first time that Secret Service counter snipers, but the former president at campaign rallies has actually been getting state and local resources. So tactical assets, counter snipers from state and locals. So with respect to why they were there in Butler, listen, we evaluate our threat landscape every day. We calibrate based on that threat. We evaluated a threat stream that we have, and we put our Secret Service counter sniper personnel out there. And looking back, it was very fortunate that we did. But the former president will have counter sniper coverage moving forward, as will the president, the vice president, Senator Vance, and then we'll await the eventual Democratic vice presidential nominee. We are going to put full resources out there to make sure that our campaign cadence now is obviously picked up, and we're going to make sure that we have all the resources out there to address any challenges that we have.
Thank you. As you're doing this review, are you looking at the days leading up to this event and the instructions that you gave to state and local and federal partners? I know in the past there used to be a PowerPoint presentation that was given before events like this, where people who were part of each unit in the Secret Service would stand up, go through the mission, who was assigned to them, what they'd be doing. I understand that did not happen in this case and hasn't been happening for some time prior. Is that something you think was missing here? Is that something you might review and bring back? And do you also think the Secret Service is too reliant on state, local, and federal partners? I mean, you have almost 2,000 HSI agents helping in events coming this fall. That's a third of their workforce, and it takes a lot from state and locals as well. So first, would you bring back the PowerPoint? Do you think there should have been more planning? And are you too reliant on state and local and other partners?
Thanks, Julia. So that will be part of the mission assurance, the communications and what was communicated leading up to it. What I can tell you now, based on information I have, is there was, and what you're referring to is what we call a police meeting, where we bring all the agencies together that will be directly supporting a particular visit. We know that there was a police meeting. We know that there were agencies from the various jurisdictions were present. the ones, and when I say that, the ones that were the primary ones identified with providing support and were going to be involved in the advanced planning process, meaning they were going to provide a counterpart, kind of like what you said, the PowerPoint. If you're going to be conducting the site, this is Special Agent so-and-so, and here's their contact info. And then usually at the end of that meeting, everyone kind of goes off and they form up and they go over, how they're going to go out and do the walkthroughs and identify some of the things. Based on the information, I don't know about the PowerPoint. I can tell you that there was a police meeting. With respect to the PowerPoint, I certainly think that visuals are always good. I think that if we're not using it, we certainly will. But that goes back to my direction that we have to be very specific about what we're communicating and what our expectations are moving forward. With respect to the reliance on state and local law enforcement, listen, there are 700,000 full-time law enforcement officers, over 700,000 full-time law enforcement officers in the United States. The majority of prosecutions in the criminal justice system in the United States are done by state and locals. That's a result of criminal investigations that they do every day in their communities to keep them safe. Over 135 officers died last year serving their communities, federal, state, and local. 47 of them died by violent means, gunfire. There's not an over-reliance on them. They're out there every day securing their communities. They know the terrain. They know the people. More importantly, they know the local laws. If you're in a state where it's open carry, we're going to rely on them to enforce local laws. I, as a federal agent, cannot go out there and enforce the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I need those state and local law enforcement officers. So I would push back on that. With respect to leveraging other federal partners, when we were in the Department of Treasury and I was a brand new agent, I would stand post during a campaign year with agents from ATF, IRS criminal investigations. We were all one big happy family. Customs. Customs moved over to DHS just like we did. So we do this every 4 years. We rely on those partners. We use them during national special security events like the Democratic National Convention, the United Nations General Assembly, the presidential inauguration. Those are whole of government security operations, which the Secret Service is the lead planning for, and we're going to bring in partners from across the government. I don't feel that it's an over-reliance. It's something that we have done going back to our days at Treasury, and we're going to continue to do that. We need those partners, and we need those state and local officers.
Can I follow up here?
Sure.
There's just something I didn't understand. When you're talking about that time period where locals understand that this person is a threat, but it's before Secret Service finds out, understand communication issues, were they not standing right next to them, or were they in two separate command centers?
So we had our security room, and then they had a unified command post, and we had Pennsylvania State Police officer representative in our security room.
But there was no Secret Service agent in the unified?
No, there was not.
Are there typically two separate command centers?
That was unique. As I understand it, that's an emergency management model that they use. As I mentioned in that conversation with our special agents in charge in the field, I've directed them, hey, we need to rethink where we put our security room. If the large majority of our partners are in a unified command post or in a different location, we need to probably be there too. And so we have to rethink how we, where we put our security rooms, and we are in fact doing that now moving forward.
So let's go to Ellen Gilmer with Bloomberg. We'll do the pool. If there's time for follow-up, we can take it. We got to take turn.
Thanks so much. Appropriators in Congress this week delayed consideration of DHS's budget for fiscal 25. They want to know more about what Secret Service needs. I know you said Tuesday, obviously every agency head is always going to say they need more resources, but can you be kind of specific about what resource needs there may be, particularly when we're looking at the technology issues, radio transmissions,
Sure.
the CUAS system?
So following this, we have had tremendous support from the Department of Homeland Security and from the Secretary. And we have, in fact, looked at all of these needs. Given this dynamic, high-threat environment that we're operating in order to meet this, we can meet this now. But it is going to require additional investments and resources, and we are having those conversations. We certainly have been, we've had great support, not only from the department, but also our appropriations committees, and we are working through kind of what our needs are right now. We will have future conversations about this, and we are appreciative that everyone is really coming together to make sure that we have what we need to meet this high threat.
And some senators have started to bring up that whole test map. Should Secret Service be in DHS? Is that a conversation that you think is productive at this time?
Listen, that's not for me to weigh in on, but what I will tell you is, there's also a lot of discussion about why should the Secret Service do criminal investigations. And what I will say is this: we were founded in 1865 as an investigative entity. It's in our DNA. I firmly believe that the best protection agents learn those skills being criminal investigators. You learn how to interact with people. You learn organizational skills. You learn to be analytical. Those are all traits that you need to have when you're on a detail. Moreover, if you look at where we are today, buildings, communities, everything is interconnected. And so we have a particular expertise in cyber and in cybercrime and critical systems protection. And so when you overlay that investigative skill set that we have, it's more than just securing the president or our protectees in a brick and mortar setting. It's also protecting them from things that make them vulnerable due to cyber. And so the only way to learn those skills, to be able to detect, to be able to analyze, to be able to make sure that we are hardening not only cyber systems, but hardening a building that is fed by cyber systems, the only way to gain that experience, that knowledge, is to be able to do criminal investigations. Additionally, it is within our investigative authority to follow up on threats. People make threats to the president and the people we protect every day. We need to have that domestic and international network of field offices to be able to track down those threats. And if necessary, bring those people to justice and present them to a U.S. Attorney's Office. So I know there's been a lot of talk. Should we or shouldn't we? Should we do this? Should we be in DHS? The bottom line is this: if you want the Secret Service to continue to be the Secret Service and be effective at what it does, it needs to be doing investigations, and it probably needs to be in the Department of Homeland Security until Congress or others have an opportunity to weigh in.
Last questions. We're going to go to the pool for those that couldn't be here today.
Just a quick question. There's a report that a whistleblower has alleged that you personally directed cuts to the counter-surveillance division, which led to the threat assessments team failing to perform its duties that it typically would before the Butler rally. Is that accurate? Is that allegation accurate?
So I've become aware of this. We got a congressional letter on it. What I can tell you is that the counter-surveillance division, they do a fantastic job. They have a very specific mission set. A lot of that mission set is here in the National Capital Region, focused on permanent protective sites. But they do go out and they support, when requested, they go out and support former details. I know that there's been allegations that I personally cut or that I denied requests. The counter-surveillance division has been out there supporting the former president's detail at some very high-profile events. They continue to provide that support, and they're out there providing support right now. So we're going to respond to the letter that we received, and we'll be sure to make that. I'm sure they will. We'll be able to share that response when the committee says it's okay to respond.
Is that a no, though? Did you cut funding personally?
I did not. No.
Did you finally figure out how he got that gun on the roof? Did it fit in the backpack?
We're working to determine that. That's something that the FBI is working on. There's a couple of, I don't want to speculate as to exactly how he would have gotten it up there.
Director Rowe, the 2024 campaign is heating up. Y'all are adding more and more candidates to your protected list. Can you ensure the protection of those candidates?
So we have already trained numerous details to be able to mobilize, to pick up multiple candidates. Most of the presidential campaign activity usually picks up coming out of the conventions. So we are prepared for this. It's just that now we are in such a heightened dynamic environment we're actually making sure that we are probably putting everything we can to make sure that we don't have a mission failure. It is incumbent upon everyone in the Secret Service. We all understand the gravity of this situation, and we are rising to meet this moment. And we are certainly, as we go into the Democratic National Convention, as we await picking up another candidate with the eventual naming of a vice presidential nominee from the Democratic side, we are going to staff that, and we're going to make sure that we have all the resources and assets necessary to provide that level of protection. Thank you, everyone.
So a lot discussed there in terms of what took place when the assassination attempt was made on former President Trump. We'll be talking now to Peter Forcelli. He's a retired Deputy Assistant Director of the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and an NYPD homicide detective, retired. Peter, what's your take after seeing this press conference? What's your main takeaway from what you've heard today?
Well, the first thing I'll say is it was nice to see the acting director actually take some ownership and provide some information. I don't see why it took this long for some of that information to come out, but it's a stark contrast to the original set of information that was provided by Director Cheadle, which was largely blaming local law enforcement. And of course, there were the comments about the roof slope that were a bit ridiculous. So obviously, coming out of the gate, Acting Director Rowe certainly did not blame local law enforcement. In fact, he explained exactly how it works. Look, one of the big things that I'll say from having been an agent in the field and from having run a field division, I was in charge of ATF's Miami field division during the Parkland shooting, the Pulse nightclub shooting. Interoperability is an issue. Our radios do not work. When I say ours, I mean federal radios with state and local radios. And oftentimes when you have multiple agencies on the scene, communication is a big problem. He mentioned command posts. I remember at times having to run from one command post to another if you wanted to communicate with people from that specific organization. So that's something that's been an ongoing problem with federal law enforcement. And look, he's right. We do rely on local law enforcement extensively because they know the lay of the land. They know the players. They know the local laws, like you mentioned. So I think this was in stark contrast.
Point, Peter, from what the acting director said. At the same time, do you think there is a role for the Secret Service to have been more proactive in that situation or to have taken more command in that situation?
Yeah, no, and look, what I see, again, I think this is a big contrast to his previous and Director Cheadle's comments. He took ownership, and he stated that. He said, hey, this was Secret Service's failure. And he didn't do like his predecessor did, which was to blame the locals for mistakes that were made. Yeah, look, they are in charge of protecting the protectee. And, where there are holes in their plan, they're supposed to identify those holes and fill them. And I think we're finally seeing him come forward about that specific issue. Look, I'll tell you this right now. Federal law enforcement as a whole is suffering from a lack of resources. They're suffering from a lack of staffing. People don't want to go into law enforcement anymore. So he touched on that a little bit as well. But I do think that he identified a lot of problems. He certainly has a lot of work ahead of him to correct them. And I guess it's going to be on the taxpayers and on the Congress to make sure that those things happen.
What do you think is the first thing we're going to see? What do you think he's going to focus that work on to make corrections for what's happened?
Well, I would hope it's the resources and a lack of communication. And it would also calls for discipline. I agree with him. Look, I know what it's like to fire a federal employee. It takes an act of God to do it. You need a thorough investigation. If you don't do that, there's a good chance you're going to get that employee back with back pay and other benefits, and they're at that point untouchable. So, I mean, look, some of the same Congress people who are demanding that people be fired and are demanding accountability in their next breath pass federal employment laws that make it nearly impossible to terminate a bad employee. So in some ways, I feel bad for the acting director because he's in a no-win situation, but he did a far better job in this press conference than he did in his congressional testimony, and infinitely better than former Director Cheadle did in her commentary to Congress and to the media. Infinitely better.
In your own personal opinion, Peter, what do you think should happen from here?
Well, I think obviously there needs to be an investigation. And if there were people who did not perform up to their standards, they need to be held accountable. And whether that's fired or retrained, that's something that needs to happen because we can't allow this to happen again. We can't have a presidential candidate or a president be subject to an assassination attempt where such glaring holes occur. And look, training is a big thing. I know when budgets get cut, the first thing that goes out the window is training. So if the agents need training, Congress needs to fund the organization to the point where they can facilitate that training. But look, I think we need to see where this goes before we start demanding that people be terminated. Our primary goal should be the public safety and the safety of the political candidates who are attending these rallies. And here they failed. And like I said, I take some comfort in hearing him say and acknowledge that failure, because with leadership comes ownership, and he's begun to own some of these problems.
And the issue of collaboration was brought up a number of times between the Secret Service, state and local police. What did you take away in terms of what could be done to improve that specific area?
Well, it's funny. I'll joke that we put a man on the moon, and here we are in 2024, and agencies can't communicate on radios because of encryption and because radios aren't compatible with one another. I felt his pain as an agent in the field and as a supervisor. I know what it's like to sit there and not have your radios be able to communicate with the people that you're out there on an operation with. And here we are, like I said, in 2024. That's something that I would think would be easily accomplished, but it hasn't. And why? Especially after 9/11, where the 9/11 Commission talked about a lack of ability to communicate and interact. And here we are many years later, right? And we're in that same predicament. So, I mean, that's the first thing, is interagency communication and collaboration. It only worked when you could talk to one another. And here there were glaring holes in the plan, and there were glaring holes in the ability to communicate. And had they had those holes patched already, those shots may have never been fired.
In terms of technology, I know that the question was raised about a drone being made available to the Secret Service, I believe. Do you see a particular way the gaps could have been compensated for through a better use of technology?
Well, the Secret Service has access to drones. They actually have the ability to knock a drone, well, to terminate that drone's flight. I wouldn't say knock it out of the sky. It would actually cause it to fall from the sky. But they could have embraced that offer and utilized the drone. I don't understand why they didn't. I don't have inside information as to why they didn't. Those technologies are very helpful, especially when you're covering a large field like this, where that drone could be up in the sky and notice anything suspicious. So why it wasn't used, I don't know. Why theirs wasn't functioning, again, I don't have the details on that. It certainly would have made life a lot easier for them, and they wouldn't be standing there answering these questions in such a contentious way had they used that technology when it was available to them.
And the question was put to the acting director, how he suspects that the shooter was actually able to get on the roof, actually able to get a firearm up on that roof. Do you have any insights on how that might have been achieved?
Well, my understanding is that firearm had a collapsible stock, and an AR-15 platform rifle, when it's collapsed, is not very long. So it could potentially fit in a backpack. There's a possibility that he had that rifle stashed up there in advance of this shooting. Obviously, there was some planning. He had some explosive devices in his vehicle, so this wasn't a spur of the moment thing. So that's something that the FBI is investigating, but it's entirely possible that he either brought it up that there in a backpack, or that he left it up there knowing full well that he planned to go up there and execute this shooting. And again, had that roof been covered, this was something he touched on, it's very important. Had there been an officer posted there, or had that roof been covered, this would have never happened. And the excuse of his predecessor about it being too hot up there is absurd, because Secret Service snipers and snipers from other law enforcement organizations train to operate in very hostile climates, heat, cold, in a pile of foliage with insects. I mean, they train for this stuff. Some of them live for it. They love this kind of stuff. So that excuse kind of falls on deaf ears with me.
That being one of the many unanswered questions that remain at this stage, Peter, just lastly, what is the burning question that you have that you're waiting to hear come out of investigations on this?
Well, I'd like to know the motive, like the why. You've heard conflicting things. I know there was the operator of that gaming system that said that he had some left-leaning tendencies. Then you've heard other left-leaning media say that he was a Trump supporter. I'd like to know the why, because sometimes the why helps you understand the how. So, and this is a homicide investigator talking. I mean, I haven't worked the homicide in many years, but that's where I cut my teeth. And motive matters. And sometimes if you know what motivates people, you can get out ahead of these sorts of situations. So again, just from an operational standpoint on the ground, there were some big holes there, but maybe there was an opportunity to see this happening before it came. For example, the Parkland shooter was posting things on social media that the FBI was aware of before that shooting took place. So what was there that we didn't see? I would love to know that. And again, that's what the FBI is going to look into, which is separate than the Secret Service's investigation, but I think it'll be very telling.
Peter, thank you very much for your insights on this.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
When we come back, reactions to a historic prisoner swap between Russia and the West, see what lawmakers and Americans have to say about the deal, and what they say needs to happen next. After deadly protests, hundreds of arrests, the U.S. now recognizes Venezuela's opposition candidate as the legitimate president-elect. Arian Pazdar is in South America to tell us why the State Department is taking this step. That and more after the break.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call
800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
The Biden administration has paused its controversial migrant flight program. It has allowed tens of thousands of migrants to fly directly into the U.S. The decision comes after the program was found to be riddled with fraud. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more on this from the White House.
The Department of Homeland Security paused its migrant flight program, which allows up to 30,000 people to fly in from 4 separate countries every single month. Those countries include Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. They're entering legally under the administration's parole program, but it was found to have instances of fraud. According to a recent report by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, internal documents show that many migrants' applications were approved without verifying information by sponsors or parole parolees. They were also reportedly using fake Social Security numbers and phone numbers, some belonging to dead people. The same address was also used on multiple separate applications, and a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security was not immediately available for comment. Republican Vice President nominee J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, made a visit to the Mexico-Arizona border on Thursday, a stop on the campaign trail. Here's what he said.
What President Trump and I promise to the American people is very simple. This is not rocket science. It is not hard to secure the southern border. You just have to re-implement some common sense policies.
And the administration is currently utilizing the CBP One app, which allows up to 1,500 migrants to enter the U.S. legally through a port of entry every single day. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The Justice Department filed a lawsuit today against TikTok and its parent company ByteDance for failing to protect children's privacy. The government claims the Chinese-owned social media platform broke the law. The Children's Online Privacy Protection Act requires services aimed at children to obtain parental consent to collect personal information from users under 13. The DOJ fears that TikTok improperly collects vast amounts of data on Americans for the Chinese Communist Party. There are also concerns about how the social media platform can potentially harm users. The Federal Trade Commission joined the suit, saying it was aimed at ending TikTok's unlawful, massive-scale invasions of children's privacy. The FTC is seeking penalties of up to $50,000 per violation per day from TikTok for improperly collecting data. The U.S. now recognizes Venezuela's opposition candidate as the legitimate president-elect. Shortly after the announcement, the office of the opposition leader was ransacked. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the details from South America.
The U.S. State Department on Thursday night issued a statement on Venezuela's elections. Now, the department gave a number of reasons why the U.S. now recognizes the opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, as the actual president-elect. For example, the department criticizes the fact that socialist leader Nicolas Maduro still has not released any tabulated voting results, but the opposition, meanwhile, already has released 80% of vote tallies from across the country. The State Department thus comes to the conclusion that it is clear to the United States and most importantly to the Venezuelan people that Edmundo González Urrutia won. Venezuela's foreign minister responded on Friday, accusing the U.S. of trying to overthrow the government. And just a few hours after the U.S. made the announcement, masked assailants ransacked the headquarters of the country's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. The perpetrators broke down doors and took away valuable documents and equipment. The opposition party says they're still investigating the issue.
We don't know for sure who it was. We don't know if they were far-left extremists trying to end our organization. We also don't know if they were part of a paramilitary group.
Also on Friday, U.S. and European lawmakers have joined forces to condemn Venezuela's handling of the election. Members of U.S. foreign affairs committees say our governments are closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela and will work together to hold Maduro accountable. Reporting in Brazil, Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
New details are emerging after a historic prisoner swap yesterday. There are mixed reactions to the largest prisoner swap between Russia and the West since the Cold War. NTD's Fiona G. has more.
In a historic prisoner swap Thursday, the Kremlin released 16 people, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, in exchange for 8 imprisoned Russians. Among the Russians released was Vadim Krasikov, who was serving a life sentence in Germany for murdering a Georgian citizen in a Berlin park. The White House spoke about the deal with Russia.
It's not easy. Sometimes it's gut-wrenching, and sometimes you have to look the other way while somebody really bad like Krasikov becomes a free man. But in the balance, in the end, better to bring innocent people home and not let them rot in a Russian jail than to take the risk that somebody bad like Mr. Krasikov is going to go back to his ways. And look, if he does, we'll be ready for him. I would stress that $0 were exchanged in this deal that brought these people home last night. It was all about people-to-people exchanges.
But some are frustrated that the deal excluded other American citizens still imprisoned in Russia. Pennsylvania congressional lawmakers say Pittsburgh area school teacher Mark Fogel was detained at a Moscow airport in 2021 for possession of medical marijuana. He was sentenced in 2022 to 14 years and is still in a Russian prison. But unlike the other American prisoners, Fogel has not been labeled by the U.S. State Department as wrongfully detained. A reporter asked President Biden about Fogel earlier Friday.
We're not giving up. We're not giving up on that.
Americans are reacting to the deal.
I'm very excited to hear that he's being returned. Thankfully, being returned. It's wonderful news, and I hope he's with his family very soon, along with Paul Whelan as well. I hope that they are able to reunite with their families right away.
I mean, it's about time. He shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. I was just political. Putin does that all the time. So I'm glad he's being released.
I think journalists should not ever be in prison for what they do.
I think it's a good sign of not necessarily normalizing relationships between the United States and Russia, but at least something that's hopeful, something that gives us a little bit of hope for the future, especially when times seem so bleak right now. But yeah, nonetheless, great news.
The release of the Americans has brought solace to many, but it remains to be seen what will happen with the political prisoners still held by the Kremlin. Fiona G., NTD News.
VP Kamala Harris has secured enough delegate pledges to become the Democratic nominee for president. She clinched the nomination during a virtual call today. Democrat National Committee Chair Jamie Harrison said he was, quote, so proud to confirm that Vice President Harris has earned more than a majority of votes from all convention delegates. He also said the DNC is the party of hope.
My friends, that's what this party is all about. It's about giving people hope. It doesn't matter what background you are, what race you are, what religion, who you pray to, who you love, how you identify yourselves. Every person in this country deserves and should have the opportunity to live the American dream.
Reports say the VP called the DNC headquarters following the virtual call to say she will accept her party's nomination for the White House. The DNC convention is scheduled for later this month in Chicago. The campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris raked in $310 million in July. Harris's team says more than $200 million of that was raised in the first week of her candidacy. Former President Trump's campaign says it raised nearly $139 million in July. That gave Trump a cash-on-hand balance of $327 million at the end of the month. Before President Biden's decision to step aside, Democratic donors expressed concerns about his viability as a candidate. They held back big checks and stood down on fundraising events. The sentencing date has been set for President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, November 13th. This is after a jury found him guilty of federal gun charges. Florida is bracing for flooding from a possible tropical storm. A storm system brewing over Cuba today will likely dump torrential rains over the Florida peninsula this weekend. The National Hurricane Center in Miami said there's a 90% chance it will strengthen into a tropical storm by Saturday night as it curves northward, just off the southwest Florida coast. Forecasting models predict it could come ashore as a tropical storm on Sunday and cross over Florida's Big Bend region into the Atlantic Ocean. It is likely to remain a tropical storm threatening Georgia and the Carolinas early next week. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency for most Florida counties. Extreme winds in Tennessee sent a trailer soaring across a college campus. The dramatic footage was caught on camera. Take a look.
A shocking moment caught on cam in Tennessee, fueled by the force of severe weather that produced twisting winds strong enough to pick up and hurl a truck trailer across a college campus parking lot. Later, the National Weather Service confirmed an EF0 intensity level tornado had made its way through the area, which would explain the trippy, twisting trailer toss action seen here. Too close for comfort weather moment, this one in the skies over Minnesota as a passenger on a plane approaching a Minneapolis airport caught this on camera right outside her window. Yowza. The flight was seemingly unaffected by the electrical close encounter, but it's still the last thing you want to see when you're thousands of feet in the air.
Federal auto regulators are getting closer to issuing a recall notice for nearly 1 million Dodge Journey SUVs. A woman died when her Dodge Journey caught fire, trapping the driver inside the burning SUV.
The National Highway Safety Administration, or NHTSA, posted on its website Friday it is investigating what caused the fire and how the 73-year-old woman was trapped inside the vehicle. A complaint filed before the investigation began said the woman pulled over after warning lights began flashing and the windows and doors weren't working. The Wisconsin State Journal reported that the incident happened on a road near Madison, Wisconsin in December 2022. The newspaper said the woman called 911, but by the time first responders got to her, flames had consumed the vehicle. The NHTSA probe started with journeys from the 2009 model year, but has expanded the model years to include those sold through 2020. Stellantis, which makes Dodge vehicles, said in a statement that the company is cooperating in the investigation.
Germany has joined the U.S.-led United Nations Command in South Korea to police the border with North Korea. That and more when we come back.
At NativePath, we're driven to improve the lives of people by providing highly effective supplements that solve common health problems and support optimal health. This is what being on the path is all about.
Sama atas الشواذ راح كثير رعب وطبعا هلا يعني أنا بحس بالرعب الكبير بدنا بس نعيش بأمان.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We need 1,000 new monthly donors this month to help children in crisis around the world and right here at home. You can help us provide food, essentials, and life-saving medical care to children in the most need.
يعني بدنا نعيش زي كل الأطفال بدنا نعيش بحرية وأمان.
In the darkest times, children suffer the most. You can help by calling right now and giving just $10 a month. All we need are 1,000 monthly donors. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you the Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
وعيت على هاي الدنيا القصف والنزوح والخيمة. أتمنى نعاود على بلادنا شايف لك إنه هذا مستحيل.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Show them they're not alone. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Germany has joined the U.S.-led United Nations Command in South Korea to police the border with North Korea. It's the 18th nation to join the multinational force. It is committed to defending the South in the event of a war. The German defense minister said the move shows Berlin's strong belief that European security is closely linked to security in the Indo-Pacific region. The United Nations Command is led by the U.S. military stationed in South Korea and is not affiliated with the United Nations. Intel was set to raise nearly $25 billion in stock market value today. It could be the company's worst sell-off since 2000. The company's stock fell nearly 21% in pre-market trading after Intel yesterday forecast quarterly revenue below estimates and announced 15% job cuts, raising worries about its ability to catch up with Taiwan's TSMC and other chip makers. Santa Clara-based Intel was once the world's leading chip maker. The company was especially visible in personal computer sales in the 1980s and 90s. Intel's stock market value peaked at nearly $500 billion in 2000. Its server chip business has been taking a hit for several years as companies prioritize spending on AI chips. Shares of other chip firms also fell. Major firms were down between 2% and 5.1%. China is coming up with new ways to revive its low birth rate. A Chinese university rolled out a new undergraduate program in marriage, a first in the country. The goal is to cultivate professionals in marriage-related industries. Students would learn about matchmaking services, wedding planning, and marriage counseling. This comes after new births plunged to historic lows and the country's population fell for a second straight year in 2023. Marriage registrations also plunged in 2022, though they rebounded slightly last year. Some Chinese internet users made fun of the announcement, with one writing, "It's time to start a state-owned marriage agency." Many young people are opting to stay single or delay getting married. That's as they face a lagging economy and poor job prospects. It's been 5 years since the massive pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, but the lives of some imprisoned young protesters remain in limbo. Unlike famed activists, they usually receive little attention from outside, but have to face similarly heavy tolls.
Joker Chan spent 5 months in jail for publishing Instagram posts containing slogans like "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times." The slogans were popularly chanted during massive pro-democracy protests in the city in 2019. Protesters were concerned over the increasing control by the Chinese Communist Party over Hong Kong.
After being arrested and jailed, all my old colleagues and friends broke off relations with me. They said I was too dangerous, not because I was not committing murder, arson, or rape, but because of politics. They worried that I would implicate them and they could get arrested.
Chan couldn't return to work as a chef in the hotel industry because of his record. Tattoos on his arms, legs, and the sides of his neck, some related to the protests, made his job search more difficult. Now he works as a part-time waiter, earning about half of what he used to make. Reflecting on his actions, Chan said he would have been more cautious if he could go back in time, but he doesn't regret what he did.
If you have insisted on doing what you believed was right, there is no need to regret it now. Regretting means giving up your beliefs, what you felt strongly about before, what you felt was right.
Since the protests broke out 5 years ago, more than 10,000 people have been arrested. According to police, about 1/5 of them have faced or were facing legal consequences. A prisoner support group said upon their release, teachers, medical professionals, and social workers face greater challenges in returning to their old sectors. That's because their positions are linked to a licensed or public sector organizations. Convicted students who were formerly jailed are concerned about whether schools will accept them.
With summer in full swing, it's the perfect time to explore nature's health benefits. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with an expert on forest therapy about forest bathing and its potentially positive impact on the human body, just after the break.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or riddled bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me. When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, you know you have it right there. And call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
Where nature embraces you and fills you with invigorating joy. Treasuring every little moment as these romantic memories gather up to complete our blissful memories together. Mokpo.
Authorities have recovered the body of a college student who fell to his death from the rim of the Grand Canyon. 20-year-old Abel Joseph Major was from Hickory, North Carolina. The National Park Service and local authorities are investigating the fatal 400-foot fall from Wednesday. The Park Service warned visitors to stay on designated trails and walkways at least 6 feet from the edge of the rim. Separately, the park urged visitors to limit outdoor activities because of extreme heat. It is advising people to limit outdoor activities between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. A 69-year-old man died on June 29th hiking in the heat. Summer temperatures on the exposed trail sections can reach more than 120 degrees in the shade. Assistance to hikers may be delayed during summer due to limited staff. As summer travel peaks, we hope everyone stays safe. Chevron is leaving the Golden State. The oil giant announced it's transplanting its headquarters from California to Texas. Chevron has been centered in California for more than a century. Since 2002, its corporate offices have been based in the Bay Area in San Ramon. Company officials say while some people will relocate over a few years' time, top leadership is expected to be in Houston by the end of the year. Chevron already has about 7,000 employees in the Houston area. The company says it believes California's energy policies on fossil fuels raise costs and discourage investment. Chevron's move comes on the heels of Elon Musk saying his companies SpaceX and X, formerly known as Twitter, are also relocating to Texas from California. Summer's long and warm days means it's the perfect time of the year to get outdoors and enjoy the wonders of nature. According to many studies, spending time in the wilderness can be greatly beneficial for the mind and body. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with the founder of an organization dedicated to the practice of forest bathing to find out about its benefits.
The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, involves therapeutic relaxation where you spend time in a forest or natural area. The system has gained popularity in many places across the United States. Amos Clifford is the founder of the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy.
Forest bathing is fundamentally a practice of spending time in nature in a way where you leave behind the distractions and are just gentle with yourself in terms of taking your time to notice how is nature interacting with you through your senses, through your intuition, how's it affecting your heart.
In 2009, researchers from Japan did experiments in 24 forests across the country measuring stress levels in participants. After just 15 minutes of viewing or walking in the forest, participants showed a significant decrease in stress-related measurements. Salivary cortisol, a stress hormone, dropped by almost 16%, pulse rates fell by up to 6%, and blood pressures fell too.
Well, we are nature. The healing power is in our bodies. But when we take ourselves out of an environment that we're evolved to fit in, then our bodies don't necessarily know how to handle that well.
Forest bathing excursions can last from 90 minutes to 3 hours. Clifford says there's no need to travel far.
If you're in a beautiful forest, everything that you want to go on to a hike to encounter is right here. Every spot you're at, it's there. And so a lot of the practice when you're guided is the guide is just going to help you learn how to notice.
Clifford says there's a sequence that you do in forest bathing where you go through all the senses.
But we're also going to go into what's the felt sense of your body being in this place. What do you notice about what's going on in the heart region inside your body? Not telling them what they should notice, just inviting them to notice whatever it is they notice.
Those living in a city can get the same effect in a park. For Clifford, there's more to forest bathing than the documented health benefits.
It has to do with coming into relationship primarily with ourselves. So there's an aspect of ourselves. It's the deepest truth of who we are. What is the essence? Who were you born to be? And what happens is we get tamed in a way that we forget or we suppress our knowledge of who we're supposed to be, and we just, instead we get a job and we get through life the best we can, often with a sense of there's something missing here.
Clifford believes that getting back in touch with that inner self is the best way to be of service to yourself and the world. Amos Clifford is the author of the best-selling book, Your Guide to Forest Bathing, Experience the Healing Power of Nature, which has been published in multiple languages. For those interested in learning more about forest bathing, you can go to his association's website at anft.earth. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Brendan Fallon. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Have a great weekend.